how do I plan my Caminos? Oh, Camino planning is such an exciting part of walking Caminos, but it can become quite an anxious time, I think, for those who haven't walked a Camino before. So I thought this week I would show you how I go through my planning process very quickly. Coming right up. Okay, so this week I'm going to talk about how I'm planning my next Camino. And a week or two ago, I went through a very simple planning process with you, to help you decide how you're going to walk, where you're going to walk, and so on. And at the beginning of that video, I said, at the end, I'll share with you how I'm planning my next one. And I forgot. So this is it. So it's going to follow exactly the same format, and I'll show you how I'm planning my next Camino, and we'll kind of link the two videos somehow. Okay, so the questions that I posed to you in that previous video, I'm going to run through and kind of ask myself, and in that way share how I'm planning my own Camino. So remember, the first question was why are you walking? Is it, do you want the social element or the alone element? I like to walk alone, although have the company of other pilgrims sort of in the evening and so on. I'm not into crowds, but I do like, if I can meet other pilgrims for dinner in small groups and that sort of stuff. I'm a social person, but I don't want to sort of have dinner with 50 people. I'm more comfortable with small groups, but I'm quite happy to walk alone all day. So that's pointing me towards a more remote Camino. It happens to be the Via de la Plata, starting in Sevilla. Okay, so I had that in mind anyway, so that's my why. It's pointing me towards a more remote Camino. Time of year. I don't like to walk in the really hot weather. I'm okay up to about 30 degrees centigrade. Above that, it gets really uncomfortable and you're going through so much water. At the other end of the scale, I'm not sure I really want to walk a winter Camino. The thought of it, I think, is wonderful. But the reality is, I live in Sydney, Australia. I used to live in the UK. I used to be used to very cold, wet, windy weather. I'm not anymore. In temperatures sort of below about 10 degrees, I feel like I'm freezing. So maybe a short winter Camino just for the experience sometime in the future. But I kind of my comfortable walking temperature, I suppose, is what is it? Probably 15 to 25 degrees C. Cooler is nicer when you're walking, but walking in rain every day is not that great. So what I tend to do is to look at previous weather reports and things like that, and there's some great websites. If you want some links, just comment down below and I'll share some links. So I'm looking at sort of temperatures and all the rest of it. What does that mean? Kind of everybody wants to walk in the same sort of weather, so you end up walking in peak periods. So for my one, time of year is probably going to be March for the Via de la Plata, because I was starting way down south in Spain. It gets hotter earlier. So it would be a month or two earlier than, for example, when I might start a Camino Frances. So that's the time of year. The next question I posed to you was, do you want a Compostela or not? Because that will determine whether you finish in Santiago and the fact that you have to walk at least 100 kilometers. So yes, I mean, I've got 3 Compostelas already, but I like them. It's nice to have them. And I think for me, it's a sense of sort of completion. Finishing in Santiago, I like finishing in Santiago, so that's that one ticked off. How long was the next question that I posed. I like to walk not longer Caminos in terms of distance, but I like to walk for a fair amount of time in days. So I'm not a fast walker, but I want that longer term experience. I couldn't walk for a week or 10 days. It's just not enough. I'd just be getting into the groove. So at least 30 days. I've done 2 of 40 days, which was nice. I feel I want to walk longer. Usually when I'm coming towards the end of a Camino, I kind of feel a bit sad and I want it to go on a bit longer. So that's why, again, I've sort of pointing towards the Via de la Plata, because the Camino Frances from Saint-Jean was 800 Ks. I've done that one a couple of times. From Sevilla, it's 1,000 Ks. So another couple of hundred, I think, will be nice. What's my start point? It's going to be Sevilla, down in southern Spain. Why? I want that sense of walking the whole Via de la Plata. And as far as I'm aware, that's the sort of traditional start point. I know there aren't traditional start points for Caminos, but it's a natural start point. And I'd love to see Seville, so I'll have a couple of days there. I did think about starting on the coast. I think you can, I'm going to get this wrong. Let me have a look at a guidebook. I'm going to get one of these towns wrong, but there are a couple of sort of remote extensions. You can start in Cadiz. How do you pronounce Cadiz? Someone going to tell me it's Cadiz or something. Or you could start in Malaga and come up the Mozarabe. So there are a couple of start points right down on the coast. Cadiz would be the one, and then go north through Seville. I did consider that. I can't remember why I discounted it. I think it's a pretty remote Camino and there's not a lot of facilities. I think maybe I'll have to go back and look at that. So my start point is probably going to be Seville. How will I get there? Preliminary planning looks like I'll fly into Madrid. Love Madrid. So I might have a day in Madrid and then get myself across. I'm looking where Madrid is. Of course, Madrid's very central. And then get myself down to Seville. That might be an internal flight or a train or something. I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't looked at flights yet, but Madrid would be logical. Could fly into Lisbon, but it's probably hard to get across. But that's a sort of small thing to get around. My next question to you on that planning video was, in terms of the style of Camino, are you going to be booking ahead or not? And so, to think about how you're going to go through that process. I traditionally have always booked 2 or 3 days ahead because I walk very slowly, because I'm not that fit and I carry a few injuries. I'm normally arriving fairly late in the day, and I just, have that little bit of anxiety, I guess, that if I'm arriving at 6 p.m, will there be a bed left? And so what I tend to do is, like today, I'd arrive at my albergue and I'd sort of think, where am I going to walk to tomorrow? And then I'd probably book for tomorrow. So that will be my style of walking. Depending how I go and how busy it is, I might just throw that out the window and just see what happens, which would be nice. I haven't done that on a Camino yet, and I'd love to have that sensation of just freewheeling and kind of staying where I want. What I have done though, as part of my planning process, and I think I've got this on a previous video, is because I know what my comfortable walking distance is each day, I literally have a spreadsheet which says on day 1 I'm going to walk here, day 2 I'm going to walk there, day 3 I'm going to walk there. That's not actually going to happen in reality. What I've done though is I have basically planned comfortable walking days to get a sense of, will I be able to do this in 25k chunks, and to get, it's really just a method of researching the towns and villages along the way and seeing how much accommodation there is. And I've on that sort of spreadsheet I've got some little notes excuse me, where it might say, this village has only got 1 albergue. So as I'm walking, I'll have this on my phone and I kind of go, oh, I'm sort of planning to head there tomorrow, but it's only got 1 albergue, so maybe I better have a plan B, or maybe I should see if I can book a bed or whatever. It gives me a little bit of a framework. Do I expect to actually walk and stay in those specific places every day? No, not at all. I'll probably get to some place and decide to have a day off and things like that. But that planning process, I think, is interesting. It gets, it's a form of research of the route. And it gives me, the most important reason I do that is that I want to know how many days should I allow for this Camino. And I think off the top of my head, I haven't looked at it for a while, don't laugh, but I think I've allowed 60 days. Might be 55. because I do walk pretty slow. I don't walk long distances. 20 to 25 Ks is my comfortable distance. So I needed to know roughly how much time will I be away, you know, when should I book my flights and that kind of stuff. And I've got 2 or 3 days in there as a buffer. So that's the reason I do planning down to that level. And the longer the Camino, I think probably the more important it is to do that, so that you can get a good sense of, I'm going to fly in on this date and out on that date. The next question I asked on that previous video, so going through my own planning suggestions here, will I be carrying my own bag or not? Yes, absolutely I will. Previously, on occasion, I have had to send stuff forward due to injury. You know, I've had to sort of take some of the heavier stuff out of my gear and send that forward. I don't like doing that. The primary reason being it locks me into having to stay where that bag is going to. You know, so when I set off in the morning, that bag I've sent ahead is going to be in that albergue, you know, in that village. I've got to walk there. And I really don't like having any constrictions at all. You know, I want to be freewheeling as much as possible. So I do still carry a little bit of injury. So what I'm making sure is that I'm reducing a lot of weight. I will work on my fitness far better than I have done in the past. And I'm trying to go ultra light with my pack. I'm getting down to about 6 kilos because I will be, you know, carrying everything with me. I want to be able to do that. The next question I had for you on that previous video was budget. So I'm kind of a middle upper budget kind of pilgrim, I guess, you know, full declaration here. On this particular Camino, the Via de la Plata, I'll be staying in shared accommodation a lot more than I would normally, only because in some places that's all that's available. And I look forward to that because I haven't done that much, and I think that'll be a really good experience. So my budget will be a little bit lower than perhaps it would be on the Camino Frances. Even having said that, I notice on the VDLP there's some awesome hotels. And look, I'm not precious about where I lay my head at night. As long as I've got a bed, you know, and it's clean, I'm happy. But, you know, give me a 1,000-year-old castle that's been turned into a hotel, I want to stay there. You know, if there's something unique and, you know, historical or something like that about a particular place, yeah, I'll experience that too. So my budget tends to be a little bit higher, maybe because of those reasons. So, you know, I'll confess there are probably 3 paradors on the VDLP that I'd really like to stay in because they just look, you know, awesome buildings and it's the history and so on that I really love. Not for the luxury rooms. It's just a bed, same as anywhere else. So yeah, that's in terms of budget. So my budgeting process, I've gone through and I've worked out, you know, my average accommodation cost per night. I've worked out probably on this Camino I'll be eating a lot more packed lunches rather than eating in cafes. And actually I've got a video on Camino budgets. We'll put a link into that as well, so you can see exactly how I go through that budgeting process. So I always take a little bit or have access to a little bit more funds than I think I'll need just for emergencies. But yeah, if you have any questions about that, do please ask, and I'll try and remember to put that link. And then the last point I was making on that planning video was then plan your gear. So as I mentioned, because this is a lot longer Camino, I'm even more conscious of the fact that I've got to minimize my backpack weight as much as possible. And I have a habit of generally taking too much stuff. So have a look at the video that I did called What's in My Pack. That's pretty much what I'll be taking. But I'm constantly going back to that packing list and really trying to chip away at it and get a little bit more weight out of it. The other thing that I'm doing, which I already mentioned, and this is not rocket science, but hey, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I generally walk Caminos overweight, like significantly overweight. So I have to tell myself sometimes whether your pack is 6 kilos or 7 kilos is not going to matter so much as whether your body is 10 kilos or not overweight, you know. So sometimes we have to be really honest with ourselves. And my goal, I'm not being unhealthy about this or stupid, My goal is to get my body weight down to a weight that I probably haven't seen since I was 30 years ago. I've been overweight since my mid-30s, and I think this is a good opportunity. I'm not talking stupid, you know, in BMI terms, all I'm doing is aiming for the top range of normal. I'm not being, you know, not being ridiculous about this. So my BMI is here. I just want to get into the top range of normal, and I haven't been there in 30 years. If I can do that, pack weight's really not going to be a problem. But I do have to make sure that I start exercising and building strength and everything to go along with that. So there we go. And then my final point on that video was book. Yeah, well, I'm planning to do this in March next year, so I've got a little bit of surgery to do before I go, but maybe I should put my money where my mouth is and book some flights. What do you reckon? Because I was hoping to do it last year, hoping to do it this year. Definitely want to be doing it next year. Maybe I've got to put a line in the sand and book the flights. What do you reckon? So there we go. That's the thought process that I go through when I'm planning my Caminos. And it's, if you like, a practical application of what I was suggesting in that other video. If you've got any planning tips, any planning concerns, do comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. But for now, I'll see you next week.